Welcome to the No BS podcast, an unfiltered look into the global hospitality and short-term rental industry with a focus on founder stories, current events, and culture.
I'm Mateo Bradford Vasquez.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside take on the hospitality industry like no other podcast can.
We appreciate your support. So let's make this official. Make sure to like, follow, and leave a review for the No BS Pod on your favorite podcast listening platforms.
And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel as well. While you're there, please like, listen, and subscribe. And oh yeah, make sure to hit the notification button to stay up to date on all of the exciting things that No BS Productions has coming up.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you?
Good morning, John. Fantastic, brother. How are you?
I'm great. We're back. It's another week, another episode. Excited to have a return guest who and when we had him on, this was back in 2022. I think I was looking at the date here. It was December 2022. We said, we're going to have to get you back on because there were some big things happening in the near future with them. And now more and more big things have happened. And we just wanted an update. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast again, Marcus from Hostaway. How are you doing today, Marcus?
Thank you very much. December 2022 was a very exciting time. I'm glad to be back here. I remember we chatted about some great stuff to come, and it certainly came. And yeah, thank you very much for having me. I listen to every episode.
Oh man, we appreciate that support. It's great to have you back, brother. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you still have the best hair in the game. And John and I were actually just talking about this, to a little levity to the situation. I think I'm coming for you, man. I'm not going to take the hat off today and show you what I'm working with under here, but I think you're going to be surprised the last time you saw me.
Yeah, there's only two words I have to say about that. One is minoxidil and the other one is finasteride.
I got you.
Yeah. There's very interesting. This is at all levels of business and also politics.
Yeah.
But there's always simple truths that are very hard. For example, let's say you want to lose weight. The simple truth is that you can spend more calories by exercising, or you can eat less calories by eating less, or maybe eating healthier.
Right.
But a lot of people, they reject those simple truths. For example, if you're ill, you can get a medicine and that fixes the problem. Or if you want to prevent the disease, there might be a vaccine for that and you want to fix that problem. But people don't want these simple solutions because these simple solutions require an individual to take personal responsibility.
Right.
And that's something that the brain tells you don't want to do that. There's a problem and there's a simple solution to it. Your brain tells you, no, there's got to be like another way. Or getting rich is very easy. All you need to do is make sure you have a certain income, and then whatever you spend is less. And then the third factor is time. If you keep spending less than you make every single month for 40 years, you're going to be rich. It's that simple. That's an answer that very few people want because it's hard and it takes a long time, just like losing weight does. And I've been researching a bit on the hair loss industry, and it seems like there's very few people who benefit from the simple solutions because there's only a couple of companies that produce medicines for that. But there's a lot of people who can benefit from all kinds of snake oil. Like if you can convince people that the simple solution doesn't work, then you can sell your own shit. And that's amazing. And that's applicable to every single industry, whether it's accountants or lawyers or vacation rental property managers for that matter.
Because it's the emotional buy, right? It's
exactly.
It's what that makes you feel good versus, working out doesn't make you feel good. You don't want to do that. You already have a negative concept in your head, right? Like
there's accountability that goes along with working out. There's accountability that goes with that. And if you could just take a pill, or you can go ahead and push a button, or you could do one of these things, whether it works or not, you're sold.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's very easy to buy the simple solutions, that it's very hard to actually buy those that require you to take accountability.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. I think there's so many kind of, not to play on words, but prescriptions of how that kind of plays out in our industry. And great to have you on here, man. There are some huge things that have happened since we've had you on last. And I would be remiss if we didn't dig right into these details. You've been busy doing a lot. and you have been out raising a lot of money.
An amount of money.
Going around. An insane amount. Let's be very clear. Like, I think since we talked last, there was announcement of 2 raises.
I have it pulled up here. I have it pulled up here. So we talked in December 2022.
Yeah.
In May 3rd, 2023, the big announcement came out. You raised,
It's
this was the big, like, holy shit announcement of $175 million Series A funding for PSG.
Yeah.
And this is when you came out with your video. You're walking in the desert, the whole breaking or a Better Call Saul thing, which was fantastic. I thought it was over the top, but at the same time, like a big FU to everybody and I loved it. I hated it a little bit, but I'll be honest with you. I was like, dang, 107, like, luck, good for him. Like they earned it, but it's like a big, I didn't hate it in a
You were
FU kind of
jealous.
way, but at the same, I was 100% jealous.
What's
100% jealous.
Yeah.
And so that was the big news. And then just this past December, like just a month, another 365 million Series B. Let's talk about this, and let's talk about raising money and like what goes into that. Let's talk about why.
Yeah.
And what's all this going for, and what are your plans with it?
Yeah, I think running a business, there's 3 different factors that are really important. And often when people look at businesses, especially people who haven't run their own business, they see only one factor. They see the product, customers, whether it's good, whether they're going to buy or not.
Right.
That's called the operational side. And that includes making sure your employees are happy, that they're educated, that they can serve the customer, making sure the customer is happy, making sure the product is good, making sure the customers get good value. That's all operational. Then there's another aspect of it, and it's slightly spiritual. It's more related to yourself and how you relate to the outside world and how you define your self-worth. And that becomes really important because you as a leader, as a founder, you will be questioned. You will be questioned in ways you never thought possible. It's almost like being back in school. If anyone who's listening was ever bullied, the reasons for bullying can be completely ridiculous. It can be your name. It can be the color of your clothes. It can be one activity where you did something that everyone else does. Then you're bullied for 10 years.
Right.
Because of that. This is why it's so important to learn to know who you are at a little different level, because you're going to take hits that you didn't know were going to be got ever. Right. The third part of it is the financial side. And the financial side is when you go out and raise capital, or you sell a business, or you bring on a business partner, or you give out stock options to people. These 3 worlds, they interact, but they're also quite detached. Mm-hmm. Of course, if one of them isn't working, you have a mental breakdown, probably your customers are eventually going to be on, and you're not going to be able to raise any capital. Or if you don't have any money, you're not going to be able to build a product that makes the customers happy. But usually they go hand in hand. So you can level up on all 3 of them. But of course, the customer is always, this reason why the expression customer's king is there. If you can't make the customers happy, then none of those others are going to follow. But actually, as we recorded the podcast last time, I took a 6-month break of the operations in the business, and I had been going full speed ahead for 7 years at that time.
Right.
And I deserved a break. So I decided we're going to do the capital game now and see what that means. So I spent 6 months listening to podcasts, ebooks, reading books, talking to other people who have done it already before, because I realized this is a new game that I know nothing about. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty black and white. It's pretty bleak. Yeah. Because if you succeed, you're going to win big time. Yeah. But if you don't, you're going to fail. And there's really no in between. It's very hard to get anything in between. And always when a challenge like that presents itself, my attitude is, okay, I need to learn everything I can to make sure that we get the best possible outcome. And that's exactly what we did. So we got a fantastic partner on board, PSG. Mm-hmm. They invested 175 million. And with that, we were able to quickly start accelerating our growth. And in March last year, so 11 months ago, we became the market leader, not only in the US, and a couple of other countries like UK and Australia. We're also the market leader in a few smaller markets like Dubai, Romania, Finland, Sweden. But we also became the market leader globally. And it was an interesting moment because we were still flying under the radar until we raised 175 million.
Right.
But a lot of people in the industry, they ignored that. They didn't really think about it that way, probably because we're so new. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary here at Hostaway. But when you look at the other solutions and the businesses out there or the people behind, they've been in the space 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
So we are still the new kids on the block. And as a result of that, a lot of people ended up ignoring us, which turned out to be amazing for us, because that meant that we could continue flying under the radar. But since December last year, when we announced 365 million more, suddenly we're no longer under the radar, and we have a completely different position in the market right now as the market leader.
Yeah.
Looking at the
and
numbers,
that's no small feat. Let's be very clear, right? $175 million investment was come back in such a short period of time with another significant investment that put your company at almost $1 billion company as a software player in this space. Like, I think you're underselling the challenge of that. Think about how many people have went out, how many other software companies in this space have gone out and tried to raise capital, significant capital. And the markets were just not believing. They didn't trust it. They didn't think it was going around. There were so many things that pushed investors and traditional investors away. And Marcus, you were able to succeed in this space, meaning that they believed in your mission, they believed in your product, and they believed in your ability to execute on the things that you were selling. So much so that they put significant amount of money in a space in our industry that doesn't typically get this level of investment. That's huge. That's huge. So again, like that, what did you learn during that process? Because John and I both had our experience in talking to VCs and understanding what they don't know about our space and the things that they don't understand about our space and the value that we sometimes see and that they just can't conceptualize. How were you able to get that across to the partners that you had, but also the other partners that may be looking at your company and saying, man, how did we miss that? How was he right? How did we not see these things?
well, and
How were you able to convey that?
in addition to that, in 23 and 24, these weren't great like VC years. Sorry,
Clear.
like people aren't throwing money at this type of stuff, but they obviously you built that relationship and trust.
Yeah. So there were a lot of lessons learned. One of the things that nobody should underestimate is spending time with your customers and your staff and your partners. We have almost 200 marketplace partners. Many of them have been on your podcast, and I stay in touch with them. And most importantly, I spent a lot of time with the customers. At one point in time, I was the only one on the sales team. So I closed a lot of the deals myself. At one point in time, I was the only one in onboarding. I was the one who actually was onboarding all the customers that our sales teams were bringing on. At one point in time, I was the only one in support with my second longest colleague, Robert. And I was also leading the product team. So I spent a lot of time with customers, and that creates a goodwill and a reputation that's very hard to bring down. And actually, I didn't have to do much convincing for the investors. You don't get good deals if you have to convince investors, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They had to spend a lot of time convincing us. And the way they did that is, it was completely crazy, the amount of demand, because a lot of them had done research in advance. They had interviewed our customers. I remember one came into our first meeting with a 29-page long report based on 200 customer interviews. So they had paid to talk to 200 of our customers.
Wow.
And they had also interviewed customers of our competition. And the thing is, one thing that these investors can see that we can't is, what was it like in other industries? Food delivery apps, or what about CRMs for healthcare providers? How did those industries evolve? And all the investors said the same thing. They see an inflection point. They see that there were a lot of solutions flooding the market 10 years ago. Many of them gave up during the path, and now the winners are emerging. When they go out and look at what's available, they see that it's very obvious that there's one big winner, and that's when investors want in. You don't want in before a market gets mature, because then there's too many unknown factors.
Right.
But now was the perfect timing, because our market is maturing. Keep in mind, these investors, they don't look at our industry only. They choose 20 different industries. Sometimes they can be,
Right.
like one investor was exclusively in hospitality. They invest in technology for airlines. They invest in technology for restaurants, for hotels, for even logistics. And so they're looking at a lot of different industries,
Right.
and then they rank those industries against each other. Which one is now ripe for an investment? And of course, a lot of other factors played in as well. You already invested into this industry. You can't make another investment in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, all of these factors played a role, and that was really positive for us with the timing. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, what does this money mean, and what's it going to be used for? I think there's only one thing I can say about that is that, and you mentioned it here earlier, there were a lot of investors looking there, and anyone who's raising capital and either succeeding or failing at it, sometimes investors say, I don't believe in this.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they say, I believe in this, but I'm not going to invest. And sometimes they say, I believe in this and I'm going to invest. But it's an entirely different thing having an investor saying that they believe in something versus them putting their money where their mouth is.
Yep.
And that's what this 365 million represents. It's more of a, okay, but how much do you believe in us? Do you believe in us for 10 million? Do you believe in us for 100 million? Do you believe in us for 365 million? And we finally got to weed out the other investors. And there was one investor who said, we believe in this for 365 million. And that's what that represents.
Yeah.
And that's great news for the entire industry, because a lot of the growth that we've seen in the last 15 years in this space have been quite unstable and unsustainable. For example, a lot of companies were started in markets that since have been deregulated or actually regulated. Yeah. So there were a lot of risks involved. And now the industry is coming to a point where it's mainstream. It's not a niche thing. It's not a new trendy hip thing. Just as an example, 10 years ago, 5% of the budget spent on accommodation in the US went to vacation rentals. Last year, that was 15%.
Yeah.
So every single dollar that's being spent on any kind of accommodation, you're staying in a hotel, you're staying in a resort, 15 cents of that goes to vacation rentals, which means that it's big enough to be mainstream.
Right.
It's not a niche market anymore.
What is that? What do you know that number? What's it to hotels? So did that come strictly from that 10% balance, that delta, did that come from hotels?
Hotels were losing share, yes. And there's also there's a lot of other forms of accommodation, for example, motels, hostels. Those have become a lot less popular in the last few years. Resorts, bed and breakfasts, which is a separate category. It's typically run by someone who lives on site and does everything else. So there's a lot of different categories there, but vacation rentals is a strong winner. And most importantly, it's here to stay. It's not going to be regulated out. It was very interesting seeing that. I don't know how much you know about Portugal, but it's a country dependent on tourism. It's one of the top 10 tourist destinations in the world.
Yep.
And they were talking about restricting short-term rentals. And they actually had the election. It was their federal election, the important one. And the main topics was, should we or should we not restrict? And the party who said we should not restrict vacation rentals, they won, because pretty much makes money. If you're a restaurant owner, you need people to come in. If you're a tour operator, you need people to come in.
Yeah.
If you're a bank, if you're an accountant, if you're any kind of business you run, eventually the money comes from tourism. For them, facts eventually, won, which is refreshing.
Well, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Everything is touched by tourism, by hospitality, and it's jobs, it's food, it's everything. And you're seeing this impact on so many communities. And these communities that have been restricting and have been getting regulated are feeling the brunt of it now. And they're like, holy shit, what did we do? And I think that over time, there will be some reversals in some of these communities, or some meeting in the middle where, and we're seeing it. We're seeing that when there was some blanket, like we're 100% restricting vacation rentals, when then they're coming back and we messed up. We need to go ahead and fix this. And I think a lot of what Rent Responsibly and David Krause and
Yep.
and the whole crew
Sure,
there
I
is
got that.
doing is super positive for this. But it's interesting, and you're right that VR and short-term rentals aren't going anywhere, and it's just going to continue to be more and more mainstream. You mentioned 365 million is just a yes. How much do you believe in Hostaway? How much do you believe in what we're doing? Put your money where your mouth is thing. What? That's a lot of friggin' money, Marcus. How are you positioning Hostaway to continue to, well, dominate? I know, yeah, I guess there's other words, or continue to deliver what property managers and hosts need to be successful.
So one thing or two things that we're investing in is the very same things that got us here. We're heavily expanding on our engineering and product side to make sure that our product can remain competitive. And the other one is the customer support and customer success.
Yes.
And we believe that property managers are going to need over the coming years a lot more help because let's say about 5 years ago, pretty much anyone could become a property manager and set up shop. And there was a lot of discussion about too much competition and people being unprofessional simply because they didn't have any clue what they're doing. But those times are behind us.
Yeah.
Now, what we've got is established professional players who have been in the game a long time. There's not a lot of new companies entering the market. As a result of that, if you want to compete in your local market, you just have to be better than everyone else. It's not enough that you're new.
Yeah.
You have to actually be better.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, there's many layers to running a business. But if you're a property manager, that's one of the most stressful jobs on the planet.
Yeah.
Right.
Some days you don't have to do anything, but some days you have to do 200 things and you can only do 50.
Yeah.
And that's really stressful. One of the things that property managers, I think, are underestimating is the power of direct bookings. And that's one reason why we wanted investors who have a broad experience and can look at our industry, not from an emotional aspect like the three of us are, but rather from an objective point of view. Hey, what happened in other industries? And we don't need to look far. Just look at airlines. 20 years ago, 90% of the airline tickets were sold through travel agencies.
Yep.
Today, that number is only 30%,
Yeah.
and the rest are sold direct because people book direct. And that's going to happen with vacation rentals as well, especially as the brands become more established. I actually don't think you need to build a big brand. It's enough that you have a strong presence in an area. If you're at a specific location, your brand name should include the name of the location. That would help for SEO purposes.
Right.
But consumers haven't adopted that yet, but they are at increasing rates. And this is something that we are going to invest heavily in, both on the technology and the customer success side, because it's something that a lot of property managers don't know is how to build your own recurring revenue stream.
Yeah.
And also that's something that helps you bring leverage against the homeowners, who some are very reasonable and others are more demanding. But if you are the one in your area that gets all the bookings, then they can't switch property manager, which
Right.
means you can increase your margins. You have the negotiation power there. You can increase the prices. They can go somewhere else, but then someone else is just going to put them on Airbnb and they won't get enough bookings because a lot of the bookings come direct. I'm not talking now, I'm talking 5 or 10 years from now. That's what's going to happen in our industry. And that's one of the reasons why we felt like we need a serious amount of capital here. There's also a lot of acquisitions that we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
In the technology space. Like you mentioned, it hasn't been easy in the last few years, especially if you're tied on cash. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we have cash in case there's acquisitions available.
And I think that's what all of the large players in this space are looking at right now. If I were to look at, and you can tell me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong or not, the players right now is yourself. It's Guesty with a little lower value. I think they have a $900 million valuation right now. You got Inhabit brand, which it's been here a long time, but still they got overall both residential and VR. You're looking at like close to a $2 billion valuation. Hospitable raised some money recently. I don't know where Track is. I know they raised some money, and they still have their enterprise clients. They're still got a place. But who do you see? Yet all of those companies and others are looking at acquisitions to go ahead and to compete with you, right? To compete with we're a small company, our focus is on customer service, but the same. It's like, how do we compete with the Hostaways? How do we compete with the Guesties and what they're doing? Obviously, we're not in the game of acquisition, but with all these little startups that are building some pretty superior, like some amazing AI startups, some amazing different things here. If you can go ahead and acquire and plug and play it into your ecosystem, own that, it's a huge play. And I think that's where your competition is between these other companies.
Yeah. And brings me back to the third point of building a business. It's about the money aspect. And a lot of the companies that you mentioned, I won't mention any individually, but a lot of them have been following so-called playbooks. What that really means is that there's one model that has worked very well and that model is how you raise capital in order to build a business. And it's worked well in other industries, but many of them work less well in our industry. So I'll mention a couple of these playbooks. One is the VC route.
Yep.
Now, the VC route means that you get an investor who is willing to invest capital, and basically the founders, they only make money if the company goes into hypergrowth.
Yep.
But it's a train, it's a hamster wheel, because once you reach a certain target, then the next investor is going to come on board. So you'll end up with 10 different investors who have different needs. And that makes it very hard to manage a company, because you might also have 10 executives and you might have 10 top clients that you want to keep happy, but then suddenly you got 10 investors to deal with.
And they all want their piece. And they all need their piece back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's important to recognize is that they came in at different times, at different valuations, and on different terms. So their interests in the business are not aligned.
Right.
Some of them might be looking very short term, others are looking very long term, which makes it very difficult to run the business. Another one that has worked well in many industries, even in our industries, the roll-up strategy worked extremely well. When Hostaway started buying up, they bought around 50 different local websites, including Vrbo, and eventually became rebranded as Vrbo and sold to Expedia. That worked very well. We have other examples of roll-ups that have not worked that well, where the synergies haven't been there. And so massive respect to the team at Hostaway, who was able to actually take those local platforms and roll them into the big one. That took a decade to do. That's not something that you just acquire 53 websites and make them run on the same platform. No, it takes 10 years. And that's if you do it well. We haven't followed any of these playbooks. We know the private equity playbook as well. That's one where you put a huge amount of money and then you focus all the efforts only on that business and you make sure that it's a much more defensive play. But we're in a weird position. And I think that's why we were able to get such a good financial outcome on these transactions, that we haven't followed any of these playbooks. Because one thing that makes it really difficult is once you start implementing one of these playbooks, it's almost impossible to go back and do something else and change your path. So we haven't chosen the path forward yet. We're still this underdog that's very agile and moving fast, but we haven't gone the VC route. We don't have 10 investors. We have 2 now. We haven't gone with the roll-up strategy. We've announced 0 acquisitions. So we still have all our cards. Whereas a lot of our competition, they have already chosen their path, some more successfully and others less successfully. And that I find really exciting. Yeah, I think I will quote one of our competitors who was on a podcast discussing this lately, and he said something very interesting. He said that these investors don't actually, he was talking specifically about General Atlantic, that's a $365 million. They don't actually want to change anything. And they want to join the business because they believe in the executive team. They believe in the vision, they believe in the values, and they believe in the customers. And they want to join that. They don't want to come in with a set agenda where they say, we know better, we're going to change things here. That was an interesting comment because it's 100% true here, but that's not the case with every investor. I mentioned earlier that the investors are pitching to us. Many of them, they came out with their playbook and said, look, if we just did this, if we just did that, then we could achieve this. And I thought, no, that's not, I saw problems with all of those plans. Either it's bad for our employees or for customers, or it's bad even for the founders. Like, we're not going to go with that. We need to make sure we have the independence, because the market is growing so fast and evolving so fast that if we now chain ourselves down to one model, it might be the right one. That's a gamble. If we keep all options open, we're much better off. And we found a lot of investors who agreed with that.
I have a question for you. These valuations of of Hostaway, of Guesty, of Inhabit are astronomical. And a lot of people they're like, holy shit, there's no way that is accurate. And there's no way they're going to get that back. You hear people talking about, there's no way that is accurate. What is your take on your close to $1 billion valuation on Hostaway?
Wow. I used to be one of those. I completely agree. On the other hand, the math just makes sense. I think the wake up call for me was back in 2012 or 2013, when Facebook acquired WhatsApp for $3 billion. And WhatsApp at the time had zero revenues, and they had 100 million users, which is not that, it's a substantial amount, but not that much. And I thought, how is that ever going to work out? And it turns out it's one of the main data sources that they can use. That's where people discuss their interests. And that's very valuable data for advertising. And the company is worth hundreds of billions. So the thing is, with these valuations, I liked actually how one investor said, you can choose the valuation however you want. Depends on the terms. If you want it higher, we can do that, and then you're going to get worse terms. So actually, we had a lot better offers on the table that we rejected because we didn't like the terms. So we are going to focus on short-term rentals because it's a winning bet right now. We're in the right place. We got the momentum and we love this industry. But that is something where you mentioned Inhabit IQ before, and how they have long-term rentals and how that can create a $2 billion valuation. That's exactly what these investors are looking at. And yeah, that's how I would say about the valuation. It's always, okay, what can you get out of it in 5 or 10 years?
And it's the smart play, right? Because even when we're talking about what short-term traditional vacation rentals are, right? But within our play and within the past couple of years, we've seen the inclusion of midterm stays, long-term stays, professional stays, right? All things that the manager, the customer is dealing with, right? Because now we're talking about people who are managing assets and optimization of those assets, right? And so what we saw through COVID, what we saw through the downturn after COVID, and people having the responsibility to, at the end of the day, get people in those units and to have the flexibility, right? Under the guise of the short-term industry, to be able to flex that muscle. Because when you're reporting to owners want their homes rented, they want them professionally managed. They want good people in those homes. And now giving them a broad swath. We weren't talking about midterm stays years ago. We weren't talking about the diversification of the assets under the short-term rental space. But now it's a legitimate conversation, whether it's to avoid regulatory risks, whether it's to help property managers provide a better service. All of those things come into play. So I think that makes sense from a very high level thinking. And from the investors, it's actually interesting to hear that's the mindset of that convergence mindset is what they're thinking, because people have been talking for years about the blending of,
Take it a step further. Look at all the hotels that have now.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
That's where I was going directly there too. And how this is and how they're commingling. And I've done it, John. And I've seen it in kind of the blending of those two worlds. The technology is the key to all of that.
And they don't have the tech built out yet. Their systems are built very strict and straight there's a couple, I think Muse is doing a decent job as far as doing what they're doing in that hotel landscape. But it's like bringing in the different channels and the distribution and all the different pieces of the puzzle to talk with one another. And they're going, oh shit, what do we do now? We want to go ahead and also offer this up for SCR, but we don't have a way to actually connect to these different pieces of the puzzle via API. So there's lots of tech play behind the scenes. And I'm sure these are all conversations that you're having behind the scenes. And any property PMS or any tech solution in our industry is looking at what are these solutions, looking at 2, 3, 5, 10 years in the future.
And there's even one industry that is nobody's talking about it yet, but it will be very big in the coming years. And it doesn't even have a name. So I'll try to explain it. And this is for anyone who is considering start becoming a property manager. This might be a really cool thing to invest in right now because you can get really big in that space. One of the challenges with this regulation is that the regulation is only targeted at the places where, let's be honest, rich people want.
Yeah.
Rich people want to be in San Francisco and New York, so they regulate. And the thing is, those rich people, they don't not want to be there just because you ban Airbnbs.
Right.
They still want to go there either because they want to or they have to, like, for business reasons. What's actually happening is, and we see this in pretty much every big city where regulations are introduced, the real estate prices and the rents go up. Now that sounds counterintuitive. The reason is very simple. Suddenly you have a rich person who's used to renting a place for a month or a week every now and then. They can't do that anymore, but they have money. So they're going to buy a place.
Yeah. Right.
And then if they keep it empty 51 weeks of the year, then that place is out of market. Nobody can buy it because it's not for sale. Nobody can rent because it's not for rent. And this is why real estate prices and rents go up. Ironically, of course, the people who own the real estate benefit from this. So they would have an incentive to promote legislation against this. But there's a massive market opportunity for exactly these type of properties. And actually in Europe, there's quite a few companies that are already doing it. You can either buy a share of a property or even a collection of properties. There's one in Denmark called 21/5, where 21 families go together and they buy multi-million-dollar homes, 5 of them, and then they share them. And there's one in UK called August Collection as well. Same concept. You just buy a home or 5 of them, and then you actually own the home, but then you don't make money on it because that's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what rich people have been doing for ages. It's just that right now in the Western world, there's a lot more rich people and they happen to have a lot more money. And if you block their access by banning short-term rentals, then they just have to buy a place.
Right.
And that's a big market opportunity as well. And that's an industry that we don't talk about here. We talk about midterm stays, talk about long-term stays, talk about hotel. Nobody talks about what about all the empty homes?
And it's not time
you
share,
mentioned that location, and we're seeing regulatory pushback around that too, right? Where you're having occupancy taxes for people who own homes and they're sitting vacant in markets where there's housing demands and housing shortages. That's actually a really interesting point because we see the Picassos of the world, the Gestures of the world from the investment side that are offering like fractional ownership. But it's not to stay in those properties. It's fractional investment opportunities. And I think it's actually interesting. That's the part that stuck with me is to hear that there's people that are doing it that actually would share the home, right? And would actually be in the home. That sounds a bit like the Picasso model, but no, I think it'd be fascinating to see how that would work and play here, especially from a regulatory standpoint. Glad you brought that up.
I spoke to a broker who's been 20 years on South Beach here in Miami.
Yeah.
I asked, how common is it for people to come here and buy $1 million or multi-million-dollar home and then spend some time in it and just let it sit empty the rest of the time? And she said, that's about 70% of all the purchases.
Yeah.
And that's before any regulation. That's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
And if you go to a city like Paris or New York, you'll find exactly the same, most expensive properties. We're not talking about a 1-bedroom for 1 million. Once you start paying 20 or 40 million in New York, you'll find that it's empty most of the time.
Yeah.
That's what people have been doing for ages. But it is a part of the same ecosystem. It's part of the utilization of assets. And there's 2 ways we can combat that. One of them is trying to promote, hey, maybe it should be rented out, because if someone can rent it, it means they won't buy another home.
Right.
And home prices won't skyrocket and people can afford to actually live there and then maybe work in a restaurant where people who own the home like to go. Makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually fascinating, Marcus. I'm going to ping you on that because I'm going to ask you some more questions outside of this around that. I think that's because there's a lot of cities, and Atlanta being one of them. There's some super luxurious homes out here that foreign investors and other people come here seasonally and live in, right? And these are estates, right? These aren't just a condo or even a nice single family home in a residential neighborhood. These are a different level, a different class of real estate in and of itself. One thing, Marius, you know me, I'm a people person. I'm a partnership guy. When I saw that you were able to be successful and raise this significant amount of money, my question is always, how does it change the culture, or does it change the culture in which you're building? Like, how do you absorb this?
Great question.
And do all the things the great things that we know you're going to do, but keep your soul, essentially. Keep the culture of Hostaway. Keep your employees engaged and believing in the mission in a way that is going to ensure your success. Because you said it earlier, right? Like, you did a lot of things in the beginning, but you've had to scale and you've had to build teams and entrust them with your vision to execute. How do you keep that? How does this change the culture of the company? And what do you see for that moving forward?
May not save lives, but they save a lot of businesses. And that's really important for us. I think a bigger threat to the culture is that because of our success, we have had to hire a lot of people. So right now, we've gone from 150 to 250 people in a little bit more than a year. And we need to make sure that those last 100 we hired, that they understand what are the foundations that we built the company upon and what are our values and how much respect we have for the customer, for the property manager. That's a big challenge. How it changes, I think this is, I noticed that it's an unpopular opinion in the tech world, but I believe that people deserve to get paid. And we have a very generous stock option program. So it's very important for me that people that work many years to build something greater, let's say the winner in a category, because that's really hard. If they succeed, they should be paid very handsomely. That's something that we've been able to deliver to our staff now twice in a row, and pretty sure we'll be able to do that in the future as well. So that's important to keep in mind. And especially people working in tech companies, quite often, they don't see a path. That money doesn't exist. People talk about stock options, but it's almost like this mythical creature. You work in the same company 10 years and you never get paid.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, it's
And I think, no, you should have, every now and then you should get at least an annual salary, or maybe 5 years of salary just come in on your bank account. I think that's really important, because the tech market is brutal, because you can build things fast.
Yep.
And you can really only win or lose. It's very hard as a family business to run it. Yeah. You have to either be the world leader or then you're. And that's going to require a lot of sacrifices from all the staff. And I'm very happy to say that we have been able to reward those who have stayed with us very handsomely.
I love that.
I love to hear that.
Yeah, we definitely love to hear that, because you're right. How many times have people taken these jobs and lured in with the appeal of a stock offering or something that never comes to fruition, and they come in, they bust their ass, and they never see that promised benefit, regardless of what's happening with the company. Like, it's good to hear that.
And that's also what I said, these 3 parts of running a business, the spiritual, the operational, and financial part. That's where the financial part meets the operational part, when you can actually do a transaction like this and then make sure that the people who are doing the hard work are actually getting paid. That at least is really motivating to me.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And there's a lot of that not happening, right? Some of these other companies we talked about, you come in, hey, you're going to get an equity stake, and you rely on these individuals to help raise you up, right? But then you're only as strong as the team that you build, right? You got to a point where you needed to build a team. You weren't your 5, 6 to 10, however many people that got you started. You have to scale, you have to grow, or you're going to be stagnant. And to be able to take care of these people that helped you get through to this Series A and this Series B is super important. And they're gonna reciprocate and keep driving for you and keep delivering throughout the future. And you're building a team that cares about each other. And I hate using the word family, and like, it's still work, right? Like at the end of the day, it's still work. When you had a core group of people that you've been through blood, sweat, and tears before, you've gone through all this, everyone deserves to kind of get a little piece of it.
Yeah, that's very true. And that core group is very important. At the same time, there's another aspect there. when you actually reach hypergrowth, which is the dream of every startup, there's a very harsh reality there that the way you do things or things, there's even a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah.
That's the real hard part, when whatever we were doing and we did some hard work that yielded results. But if we keep doing that, we're going to fail. We
Right.
need to constantly change. And sometimes that involves people changing. So one of our key requirements when we recruit is we try to gauge how humble they are, how adaptable they are. Are they willing to take a promotion and then later step down and do something else? Are they willing to move to a completely new position? Because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Because whatever we're doing now that's working, 6 months from now, we need to do a lot of things very differently. If it worked, if it didn't work, we also need to do things.
Yeah.
Like there's no scenario where we just do a good job and keep doing it. No, we have to constantly evolve.
Marcus, it's been awesome getting you back on. So glad you're able to join us again. It's one hell of an update. Excited to see what happens next, right? Where you take this, how you built a killer team. You got a great product. You've earned the respect that you're getting. And it's exciting to see tech companies like yourself and like some of the others out here that are making positive strides for our industry.
Yeah.
And these other companies are up to now. You hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that. I think when you raised that Series B, you weren't necessarily taken seriously when you raised a Series A. Now that you've raised this next raise, they're like, oh shit. All right, for real, they're here. And kudos to you and kudos to your team. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's
Thank you
great to
very
have you
much
on
for
board.
having me.
All right, until next time, Marcus.
Next time.